Thank you for joining us and welcome to Better Together Live, where we create helpful community connections when it matters most. I am Jamila Bowman, your host and the Community Relations Coordinator here at Therapy Work. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Ariel Gerlock, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist that specializes in eating disorder. Welcome, Ariel. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We started Better Together Live to highlight local resources like you to offer expanded access to support for our local community. So I'm very, very happy that you're here. Let's start with you. Talk to us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I also hold the credential of a certified eating disorder specialist. So that means I've done many hours in the eating disorder community. I've taken a test. I've done a lot of research. And I hold that certification. I've been working with eating disorders in the therapeutic sector for about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And I am also the co-founder of Eating Disorder Collaborative, where we are a group of practitioners that specialize in the treatment of eating disorders.
Wonderful. You are a busy woman. Sure, you are. So tell me, what classifies as eating disorders?
So there are several different classifications of eating disorders. So I'm just going to highlight maybe the top four, which would be one. We would start with ARFID, and this is a newer eating disorder. It's avoidant food intake restricting disorder. So these are the extremely picky eaters, and it's when an extremely picky eater that has caused malnourishment. So we all have those kids that are like a little bit picky, like my kid,
yes.
Yeah.
I think he still is a little bit. He's 16, but he still is.
That's kind of normal. Everybody has their ebb and flow, but these people are the ones that are so picky that it really affects their nutrition and their growth. So that's one category of eating disorders. They're not really concerned with body image or anything like that. We have anorexia nervosa, which would be traditionally people who are lower weighted, that are highly restrictive. They may engage in binge purge behavior, but their traditional way and means of maintaining their weight is through restriction. Their intense fear of gaining weight. Next two categories would be bulimia nervosa and binge eating disorder. So bulimia nervosa is someone who binges and then compensates for that behavior. So traditionally people think of purging through vomiting, but people can purge through other ways. They can purge through exercise. They can purge through diuretics or laxatives or even restriction. So if you see somebody who is like doing an extreme binging behavior and then extreme restriction, or extreme ways of compensating for that, that's an bulimia.
Bulimia, okay.
Yeah. And then binge eating would be the category where people are overeating excessively and then not really doing the compensatory behavior. These are the people that are eating large amounts of foods, And, I think commonly people will say like, oh, I have a binge eating disorder. Well, in America, we all overeat at some point, but this is something that they're doing repetitively, maybe traditionally on a weekly basis.
That's true. Yeah,
large amounts of foods. So those are the categories of eating disorders. There's some others that we can talk about, but those are the four main.
That's the most main. Okay. So who is the most likely to have an eating disorder and why?
So traditionally, what we see is that there are several factors that go into an eating disorder. So one of the big ones is the genetics. Like people are genetically and genetic and biologically predispositioned to have eating. Mm-hmm. Then we have people like the other categories is the people with personality traits, like personalities that are a lot more rigid and inflexible, a lot more perfectionist oriented or fear oriented. And then we have environmental factors and cultural factors. So who is really going to have an eating disorder? It can be anybody.
Yeah.
It's not like sure, we can probably, after we know somebody has an eating disorder, we can kind of go back and say like, well, yeah, genetically this makes sense, but like I can't like pick somebody out of a lineup and say they're going to be the one that has an eating disorder.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. So my question is, what do we see more females affected by this disorder, and what are the most common reasons they give you for this?
So I loved that you asked this question, because I think this is a really big question that a lot of people ask, is that they think that the eating disorders are predominantly female. And what we know from research is that, yeah, we have a lot more females that seek treatment for eating disorders. But we don't know if that really represents the population that has eating disorders. So what we are seeing, especially with Black Lives Matters, we have seen a lot more like an expansive, more inclusive inclusivity with people seeking help. So we're seeing that, we thought that this disorder may have been this category, like white women, but what we're
certain
finding,
age,
what we're finding is that there are a lot more people that were underrepresented in our research and in our practices. We weren't seeing Black people, we're seeing more transgendered, these people were really underrepresented when we did all this research. And so we say, in a lot of the books and in a lot of the theories we see, they use the term she a lot, or her, but we're seeing that there's all these other groups that weren't represented. There's a lot more males that have eating disorders that we aren't showing in our research or talking about. There's a lot more people of color that struggle, that aren't really talked about. And so I think that idea that we've been painted is that this is a teenage female white disorder.
Correct.
But the reality is that it spans, like my practice has exploded with males, because they, finally it's almost it was shameful for them to admit that they were struggling.
I was going to say that. I bet it was shameful to come and say, hey, I have an eating disorder and I'm a man. I shouldn't be having this, right?
Yes, exactly. And we're seeing that with cultures too. As a Latina myself, it was a little bit shameful to see, we don't go get help. You seek your help in your family.
Correct. Over dinner.
So I think with everything that's going on in our world, there has been a lot of negative, but this is one of the really beautiful things that has been birthed out of the ashes, is that we've been able to talk about mental health in a different way, and mental health and being more inclusive, and making sure that us as providers are more inclusive and not just using terms that are archaic.
I love that, what you said, Ariel. I think it's so important that people know that what you're doing. It is, and thank you for that. Are you running any groups right now?
I am. I'm running actually 2 groups. One is for it's a skills-based DBT group for eating disorders, and so it's very structured in teaching skills. The other group is a little bit off topic, but it is a trauma group for sexual assault survivors, which we find with eating disorders. It's they come in with eating disorders, but it's really a coping skills for all these other issues that are going on.
Like a layer, like an onion, different layers, right?
Totally. Yes, exactly.
Can you develop an eating disorder as an adult?
Absolutely. So it can. So this is a horrible analogy, but this is this is kind of the analogy that people have used for a long time, is that you're preloaded for an eating disorder. So you have genetic predisposition for it, and something pulls a trigger, something pulls a trigger and you're shot out like a bullet in a gun towards an eating disorder. So it can be anything. It can be in your 20s and when you're in college. It can be when you're going through menopause.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. We see a lot of women struggle right after menopause. And I think, what's coupled with that is there's a shift in your body, so I think that kind of can be a potential trigger for a lot of people.
Right. And it's a good point. I talked to this doctor a while ago about, women with menopause. Not all of them, but a lot of women, because of hormonal change, they tend to gain weight. And that's when all the problems start, because nobody wants to be, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be thin or fit. So they start developing this problem, which is, it's sad. Yeah.
Yeah. We really live in a culture that has a major thin ideal. Like that is what we worship right now in regards to body image.
Yeah, and that's what's going to be my other question is, and I know you talk about genetics, and the question is, does genetics plays a role in developing eating disorders, or is the constant contribution of cultural accepted ideals of thinness that the media portrays of the perfect size?
Yeah, I think it's become a lot more extreme. With social media and more things at our fingertips, like it has become a lot more extreme. I think even like the diet culture has become more extreme, people are engaging more with diet behavior and the culture. So we're preloaded, and then something like the environment pulls a trigger for us, and we end up stumbling into this eating disorder. I will say that in the United States, and there are several other countries that might have this similar pattern, especially now that we're a little bit more globalized. Mm-hmm. But we're very disordered in our eating. Like we love these like kitschy diets, like, okay, we're going to be keto and that's going to solve all of our problems, or we're going to do intermittent fasting and that's going to be like, solve everything. And we put a lot of worth into our physical appearance, like, and that can be passed down generationally. Like a lot of families may have beliefs about bodies and how they should look, and that can be passed down transgenerationally. So culture does affect how we view our bodies and how we engage with them.
In places like in South America, I'm just going to talk about South America because I am from South America. Towns that they're not as exposed as big cities to media.
Yes.
They have no clue. They don't worry about any of those things. And I think they're happier people because they're not trying to compete or see somebody's body like the ideal body. You have to accept the body you have and be healthy. Being healthy doesn't mean being thin.
You are speaking to an actual research that has actually happened, and I might misquote it, and so, but I want to say it was Fiji or somewhere in the South Pacific, somewhere over in that neck of the woods. And the study was done like late 90s, early 2000, when like there wasn't really television, there wasn't mass media going on over there, and they studied like girls and women with their body image and how they reacted to their bodies. And then they went back after more globalization has happened and more media has come in, and the reports of body dissatisfaction and diets that increased was alarming. It was yeah, I mean, and they were, there's been other studies like that throughout like the world, that like without like all of this bombardment of like thin ideal, women and people tend to be a lot more satisfied with their bodies.
That's right. I mean, not only that, but the stress that you put yourself to try to be somebody else, that can damage not just like, I mean, everything else, right? Your mind, your body, everything. It's so much stress trying to think or catch up with somebody else's body image is just not good.
It really does. I think, one of the most interesting things and why I stay and love working with eating disorders and body image is because it's really one of the only diseases where you put your body against your soul. Like you're in constant war with your body, which is this vessel that we are supposed to be inhabiting and living in. But our soul and our body are just at this constant battle. And I just find that so fascinating how, how incongruent a lot of people live. And so it's really
I
rewarding.
love that analogy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. What would you say to a woman who suffers from, eating disorders that has a daughter? And we're talking about genetics. What would you say to this woman to encourage the daughter to do or not to do?
I would say, so if a woman, depending on her level of recovery, I think it's really smart to think about how you engage with your body. Like if you, if you're getting on the scale every day, if you're feeling like you have to work out every day, if your worth is still based a lot in your image, then that actually gets translated down. So really, it's kind of like when you heal yourself, you heal the universe. Like that's so true. So do work. Yeah, keep doing work on yourself and talk about it. Like talk about it with your daughters and your sons about like, wow, how come, my son and I talk about this, like, how come you think that person thinks that way? Or how come you use that word to describe that person that way? Do you, like, what's that feel like? Would you want to describe it be like? So just like having that open dialogue with like, well, why do we believe that? Like, why do you think that person is worth more because they look like that?
Makes a difference. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
This is wonderful. Is there anything else you would like to add to this conversation?
No, I just think like it's a huge conversation to have. There's so many different veins that you can go down, and I think that's the cool thing when you start to talk about like bodies and how we engage in them and food. It just I could talk for hours about it.
For hours, yes. Would you like to share your information with us so people can reach out if they need to?
Sure, absolutely. You can find me online. You can find me on my personal website, which is arielwhitlock.com, or you can find me at the eatingdisordercollaborative.com. And my email is arielwhitlockmft@gmail.com.
Thank you so much. And for us, our philosophy in Therapy Works is very simple. Area we are better together. Everything we do is in support of our community. And we understand sometimes making the first step, the first call isn't always easy. When they're ready, we are here to help. If you want to learn more about us, visit at mytherapyworks.com. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And I can't wait to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.